Are we ready? You remember what you brought with you this morning when we talk about fear and that I asked you to reflect on the fear that is part of your life and maybe that what made you come here? You remember? Maybe I didn't say that. So we're going to do a little meditation on self-compassion just to have an experience of how we can do that. If you have a lot of so I'm going to ask you to bring something to your mind that is unpleasant, and maybe we focus on a fear. But if you have experienced huge amounts of fear in your life that are very overwhelming, don't go to the whole thing, right? Don't connect to the whole thing. Take a little portion of it. Take something small that you feel like I will be able to manage that, right? If you have a lot of experience, a lot of things that are very difficult to digest, I personally feel that it is very good to, before you go there totally on your own in meditations, that you share that with another sentient being who has a lot of compassion, so that you have that connection in the reality, and that you're not, because when we experience trauma, and we immediately disconnect from these painful feelings in order to survive, we are very alone in these painful feelings. And that being alone in these painful feelings is one of the problems, why they cannot resolve. So when you start sitting on your own, or I can do this on my own, I will resolve my own painful feelings, I don't think it's possible. It's very, 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 very difficult, right? So when you recognize that, it is good that you first share that with somebody else, so that you have some kind of feedback of that person, how to be with these painful feelings, right? So when you share that, that person will be with you in a certain way, and that is helpful for you to know how to be with your own feelings. Normally, we learn that as little kids, from role models, from our mom or dad or whoever. But if we have not learned that, we still need to nourish that part of our mind to be able to give that to ourselves. Because otherwise you are sitting as a little child, totally harmed, totally isolated from everyone, and you tell the child, it's okay, I'm with you. The child cannot cope with that. Right? So if you have these kind of experiences, then just take it very easy in the meditation, do a little bit, or take a little fear, and then for if there are big issues, try to find someone who can truly listen to you with deep compassion before you go and apply yourself to meditation. Meditating can bring up stuff. Right? If you don't have the tools to deal with that, it's sometimes better to do first other things and not meditate. And it's not always the solution. All right? Just as a... I think all the practices have their own place, It's not necessarily that we can heal everything with one tool. It's not like that. All right, so then we do the meditation. So if you feel scared or were too scared, you just open your eyes and you just listen and you don't go too much inside. Okay? And then you try to apply whatever you hear, you can apply, but don't make it too big. So then first we make sure that we sit comfortable. And so in meditation, we always talk about having a straight back, but at the same time being relaxed. And so you're aware of your body and whatever arises in the body. And maybe you're aware of your mind and whatever is arising in the mind. But what is always the starting point for the meditation is that we connect with the body or with the breath, or with our feelings. Because the body, the breath, and the feelings, they are always in the present moment. And in the present moments, attachment and aversion does not arise. So focus on whatever you experience in your body. And if you prefer to focus on the breath, then just focus on the breath. And you let your mind rest. And then call to mind an unpleasant feeling that you have experienced somewhere in the past. And make sure that that unpleasant feeling is not a huge one. It's just maybe even just a small one in order to have some experience doing this practice. So that unpleasant feeling can be the fear that we spoke about this morning. But if you feel more comfortable with another unpleasant feeling, that's fine too. And so you observe where that feeling arises in your body. You are mindful of that. And while you are mindful of that feeling, you make sure that the space in which you are is a space in which whatever arises in your mind is welcomed, is accepted without any judgment, and where there is enough loving kindness and compassion to soothe that feeling. And so observe how that space looks like. Some people like to visualize light. Some people prefer a very big space in which they feel safe. Some people prefer something smaller. So think about the space that you give to yourself, allowing that feeling to arise. And observe what you need in order to feel safe enough to be with that feeling. And so then from observing that space, go to the feeling itself that arises within that space. And you feel where it is present in your body and how it feels like. What is it doing? How does it appear like? And while you focus on that, you're not trying to make a change. You just allow it to be whatever it is. Change happens naturally. So when we step back and allow feelings to arise, these feelings naturally come and go. They naturally change. And while that feeling arises in your mind, while it is there in your body, talk to yourself in the way that you would talk to your best friend when they experience something similar. And observe how you naturally choose kind words, how your voice is gentle, how your heart is open. And while the feeling arises in your mind, it is as if that friend keeps talking about the pain that is there. And you let that friend talk. And you keep soothing in whichever manner works. And what you want your friend to feel is that that friend is not alone in their suffering. You are with them. So you give to that part of you that is suffering, that is experiencing that fear of something else unpleasant. You give them the message, you give that the message, you are not alone. I'm here with you. I'm feeling what you're feeling. And when our friends go through distress, we keep reassuring that they are good human beings, that they have not done anything wrong, that we love each and every aspect of them. And so we say that to that part of us that is suffering. You have done nothing wrong. Things happen. And sometimes unpleasant feelings come, and sometimes fear comes. That's okay. We can just be with that and let it arise until it dissolves back into the mind. Sometimes we say, breathe through it. So when that unpleasantness arises, breathe through it. And then we can go back to the feeling that we had in the beginning and see if something has changed. And then we can acknowledge our courage. We can acknowledge that what we just did is really fantastic. It's going to help us to turn things around, to become friends with these aspects that we don't like. And once we become friends, it's really strange, but once we become friends with them, once we connect with them, the not liking is gone. And we think, why did I not like that? There's nothing there not to like. And so then we bring the meditation to a conclusion by you can take whatever was useful for you or whatever you have observed that you want to remember. You reflect on that. And then when you feel ready, you can open your eyes. How was that? Does anyone want to share? And if it's not, that's fine too.
I think it's interesting to do meditation where you accept those parts of your being that maybe you don't like. So from that, it's nice to sort of focus on that in a way that is kind and loving and accepting, because it's part of who I am. So that was really nice.
Did you feel a shift from that?
A shift in acceptance.
An acceptance.
That I know that it will arise again. It always has. It's part of me, but yeah, there's a shift in.
Was there also a shift in the not liking?
Yeah, it wasn't so much. Yeah, it's separated and accepted it, and if it happens again, it's fine, rather than being embarrassed about that part of me. Yeah.
And then probably the not liking becomes much less.
Yeah.
And I think when the not liking disappears, it becomes just part of you and there's nothing not to like.
Yeah. No, it's great. Thank you.
Right? Yes.
I found talking to my friend instead of talking to myself easier.
Mm-hmm.
So I, like when I'm trying to talk to myself and being compassionate to myself, I can't do it. But if I'm doing it to someone else and trying to empathise with them, I find that a lot easier. So that's a good tool that I can use in the future.
Yes. Did anybody else have that experience? Yes. Yes. So when we think about the friend, of course we are kind to the friend. No problem. But how do we do that towards ourselves? No, it's much more difficult. And so when we start seeing that, and then we think, I'm going to say to myself what I would say to my friend, you know, so you think about your friend and you say it, and then you make the friend disappear and you say it to yourself. Yeah, I think once we can do that, you know, we are already on our way. It's very strange that we have an aversion to these negative experiences that we have. But with that, we have an aversion to that part of us that has experienced that. So we reject part of ourselves. And these parts are of a nature we would never reject it in anybody else. If anybody else comes with that suffering, we say, of course, we want to connect. But because ourselves, it is a suffering that we automatically want to disconnect from. We have the opposite reaction. It's really weird if you think about it. But it is because that automatic reaction that we have of aversion is not in accordance with reality. While when the friend talks about their suffering, our compassion, that is in accordance with reality. So that aversion to ourselves is not in accordance with reality. I want to say not natural, but we all do it. You know, it is an automatic reaction that we have been habituating to, but in accordance with our nature, it's not in accordance with our nature. We disconnect from our nature when we do that. Believing that there are certain parts in us that are not good is not in accordance with our nature. How can we become a Buddha when there are parts in me that are not good? What are we going to do with that part that is not good? So, according to Buddhism, never talks about parts of us which are good or not good. You know, they only talk about actions, and certain actions have results. And so, if you want to achieve a certain result, I want to develop all my good qualities because I know that when I do that, I feel most happy. So I can create the causes for that, and I can stop creating the causes for things that are opposite to that. That's all. No judgment, no guilt, no shame, no nothing. And yes, we make mistakes. So sometimes we do things that are opposite of what we actually want. You know, there are many monks who run away from the monastery and they don't want to engage in practice, and they do. And at a certain point, they might come back. And maybe it might take us 3 lifetimes to come back. Doesn't matter. Right? If we make a mistake, if we divert, we do not have enough merit not to divert. Right? In order to walk the path, we need to have a lot of merit. We need a lot of positive energy. Without that, there are only obstacles, there are only difficulties. So when there are difficulties and I move away from my path, it's because I don't have the merit. So it's not because I'm a bad person. It's not because I'm lazy. It's not because but I don't have the merit. So then if I want to change that, I need to create merit. How do I create merit? By engaging in virtuous actions, by stopping the non-virtuous actions. That's all. And then when I keep engaging in virtuous actions, the merit will naturally come, and then things will naturally change. I don't have to make the change. It will change. Right? Sometimes you have to change. It's like change happens when causes and conditions are there. Change happens for the positive and for the negative. Nobody to blame, right? It's not one thing that goes wrong. You don't like it anymore? I know you should. Sorry. See you. So we don't need to change ourselves. We just engage in a different way in actions. And then change will happen. Naturally. There was once a friend of mine, he engaged in a relationship and they only were fighting. And then because of all that, his mind became more and more negative, and he was studying with us the basic program at Chenwezek. And then he wanted to run away, and he didn't want to study anymore. And he went all that negative direction, right? And so then you find yourself in a crappy situation. And so at a certain point, he went to the teacher and he said, my God, I did all these wrong things and guilt and shame and all that was there. And then the teacher said, I think he said, do 100,000 Mikmitsemas, the mantra from Lama Tsongkhapa. And you think, is that it, right? So he did it. He said, after that, my mind was totally fine. He was back in the Dharma, all purified, and the merit was there. Right? So it's not that I need to change. No, I change my actions. And when I engage in positive actions, for sure the result will come. Right? And we need to learn to trust that, right? We're not so used to think about karma and think about when I engage in positive actions. What we want is I do the water bowls and I want to have now a positive action. It's not going to happen. It might take a while. But at a certain point, you see that things become more easy in life and things start to become a little bit different in life. And instead of having these people who are always so rude to you, so you suddenly start to meet people who are kind to you. And you think, oh, where's that coming from? Oh, yeah, I've been doing the water bowls and with a house for a while. And if you say that in the world, everyone will say that you're crazy. But it works like that. It works like that. But we need to learn, and we need to learn to trust, right? That law of cause and effect, we don't think in that way with respect to the mind. But yeah, okay, enough about that. So this is how we can practice self-compassion. And you can do that with any negative feeling that arises in the mind and that you feel like, oh, too much, I don't want it. Slowly you prepare yourself to connect with that feeling, to be mindful of the feeling, to talk kind to yourself while you are going through that suffering. We go through suffering when we experience negative feelings, right? We have to acknowledge that I am suffering. And what do we do with suffering beings? We wish them to be free of suffering. So that is the compassion. And so if we know how to do that, and if we start making peace with all these parts in ourselves that we don't like at the moment and that we want to disconnect from, my experience is that when we see these parts in others, we are not so agitated anymore, and we understand much better. Oh, you have that too, I know how that feels. I'm not going to beat you up because you have that. I'm going to be kind to you because I can see that you're trying to work with it and that you're struggling, and I support you. I support you in becoming who you are, who you truly are, who you feel that you truly are. Right. So then we already develop less bias in the mind and more equanimity in the mind. Can you see that? When we make peace with the aspects in ourselves that we don't like, we also make more peace with people that we don't like, or qualities of people that we don't like. Because I have that too. And I didn't like you because I have it. And I didn't like that part of myself. But the moment I like that part of myself, I like you too. It's really weird how that goes, you know. And then you can see that if I can like all these, or if I can connect with all these disconnected aspects in myself, it's much easier to connect with anyone who appears in front of me. It's not, oh, I like these people, but I don't like these people. No, everyone is welcome. Everyone is beautiful inside. Right? So then we have already more equanimity, and we are working towards developing bodhicitta. The mind that has compassion for all sentient beings, and the mind that is willing to work for the freedom of suffering of all sentient beings, who wants to take the responsibility for that. All independence upon self-compassion. Right? Sometimes, yeah, I'm not 100% sure, you know. Sometimes I think, not sure what Lama Zopa would say for this. What do you think? He would say yes. One time we had a retreat in 2016, I think, in the US. And we were serving tea to everyone. And then we were discussing, you know, oh, Lama Zopa's never talking about self-love. He's never. Why would he not talk about it? It's so important that we learn how to love ourselves. And so we were discussing that. And at a certain point, Lama Zopa starts to talk about self-love, right? And he says, oh, no, I'm not talking to I cannot talk about it. He said, if I start talking about it, you start doing such weird things. And so then I've been thinking about it, and I thought, well, what do we think how we become happy? I become more happy and free of suffering if I give myself what I want, which is attachment. It's not love. It's attachment, right? So he doesn't want to trigger that, so he's not talking about it. I think we cannot hear it in the proper manner. So self-love, self-compassion is not giving myself what I want. It's not running away from the suffering that is there. It is walking towards the suffering, walking through the suffering, and being content with what I have. Right? So this, I mean, this today is not enough time to go there, but this we have to work on with the mind so that we don't mistake, that we don't use that self-cherishing mind that is reactive in order to, say, develop self-compassion. Because it's not self-compassion. That self-cherishing mind is not the one who's creating self-compassion. Or when we use the self-cherishing mind, whatever we do with ourselves is not self-compassion, it's not self-love. Self-love is renunciation. Wanting to get out of samsara in order to be free of suffering. Right? So we have to think about that. And I don't have it clear. I need to do also more thinking about that. I think, you know, this is when we bring Buddhism to the West. It's like we need to apply it to our mind, and we need to see how can we understand the teachings of the Buddha in essence. And we have a conditioning that is not based on Buddhism. It is based on Christianity. So our ears are programmed in a different way than the ears that normally receive Buddhism. And so we need to become aware of that. And we need to deprogram ourselves first before we can really understand what Buddhism is talking about. I think. I don't know. It's my experience. So that, I think, is always the start. And then, so when there is suffering, this is what we do. And then we have this self-grasping mind, independence on which this reactive mind arises, either with aversion or with attachment. And so we can work with that mind in order to subdue that mind. And the most powerful way to subdue the mind is to bring the mind to the present moment. Because aversion is generated in dependence on something that already has happened to us. And attachment is generated in dependence on what we think might happen to us. But in the present moment, if we are with what is and are okay with what is, there is no attachment and no aversion there. And that seems like an easy practice, but it's an extremely difficult practice. Sometimes you hear people saying, oh, just bring your mind in the present moment, just bring your mind in the present moment. I think Edgar Tolle. And then you become enlightened. When you can hold your mind in the present moment, you become enlightened. And I think, yes, bring the mind to the present moment and connect with your experience and stay with that experience so that you don't aggravate your mind. But having the capacity to constantly stay in the present moment comes from something else than practicing staying in the present moment. So I don't think we can achieve Buddhahood by just staying in the present moment. I don't think that's possible. I know it's not possible. It's like when I was walking with little kids, you know, you have these kids that have problems walking. Maybe they're going on their bum, right? They're not crawling, they're not rolling over. They're just fixated like that, and then they can't walk. And then what they do is we just lift them up and we let them walk, and we let them walk. And we teach them walking by making them walk. I don't think you learn proper. I mean, you might learn the skill walking, but you don't. There is no proper. I don't know. It's like it's just one skill that you teach the child. But if you teach the child how to roll over and how to crawl and how to, you know, move from left to right, and instead of being stagnated like that, at a certain point the child will naturally start walking because all the conditions that are needed to walk are there. So I prefer to train conditions instead of training the result that you want to achieve. So with practicing bringing the mind to the present moment, I don't think we can realize holding the mind in the present moment. But I do think it is very useful to subdue our attachment and to subdue our aversion. And also not to engage in the stories that come about in dependence on that. And so then we can bring the mind to the body. We can bring the mind to the breath. We can focus on our feelings, be mindful of that, and that helps to subdue. Right? Then when we are doing that, we can think about the nature of the mind in terms of, you can think the nature of the mind, you know, all the thoughts that arise in the mind, all the stories that arise in the mind. They are by nature clear and knowing. It's like, they're like space. There is no solidity to it. They might sometimes appear like, wow, this is real, right? What arises in the mind, sometimes we think that that is reality itself. Is that true? I haven't spoken about that. Whatever goes on in our mind, we somehow believe that that is what is actually happening in reality. But if we start investigating the mind, then we can discover that these are thoughts about reality, but they are not reality itself. And the more thoughts we have about reality, the more difficult it is to see reality itself. It's like it's obscuring our vision. So these stories that we tell us, right? Somebody just said something really unpleasant to me, and that person, and then my mind goes, you know, and I have all these stories about that person, why they are so awful, and so this, and so that, and so that. It's a story. Has nothing to do with that person. That person might not even have had a bad intention saying what they were saying. They might have had even a good intention, but I could not hear it. But when I make the stories up and then believe it's coming from that person, I believe that person is really like that, I have a distance. I don't want to be with that person anymore. I don't like them. Right? How do we feel when we have a person in our life that we don't like? It's not nice for ourselves also. So what if we can control that mind and say, you know, whatever comes up in the mind, yes, it was an unpleasant feeling. Sure, you can say, yes, for me, that was an unpleasant feeling. But somehow that was my karma. It doesn't mean that that person gave me that feeling, but there was a condition that triggered that feeling. And so I don't have to make that bigger. That karma is finished. There was a karma there, finished. So I don't have to comment on it. Just leave it. And then I might look at that person and I'm going to look for something pleasant, something nice, something, a good quality. And I see, oh, actually this person is really kind to this person and that person. Wow, they're actually really kind. And then when we see kindness, the heart opens and maybe we want to connect. In order to do that, we need to see that our thoughts are not reality itself. One time I did a meditation 1 month with Antonio Sattva. Huh?
I've done 10 days.
10 days? Uh-huh. Yeah? Where did you do that? Oh, yeah. So I did it in Bodh Gaya, 1 month. And you sit 1 month, you just sit and session after session, and he gives you instructions and you focus. And then you see stories coming in the mind. You know, these stories are coming to distract your mind, to entertain your mind. Because it's kind of boring that you just look at the floor, even not on the floor, but somewhere in between. And so then at a certain point you observe that you're just entertaining your mind, you know, because it's so boring what you're doing. And you cannot be with the boredom. And then at a certain point I saw that I was making up a story. And I believed that that was actually happening. I was just sitting on my couch, but somehow I believed that that was happening. And then it didn't happen. And so then the next, I tried to change the story in order to make it happen. Oh, it didn't happen. It took me days to discover, like, it's just a story that I make up in my mind. You know, it's weird how we do that. Yeah, and so in order to get to that discovery, you need to sit with that boredom, no, that we hate, we don't want it. But it's very useful. I still hate it. But it's very useful. And when I have, you know, the space in my mind, I will do it. And I will make space for it because it's so useful. But it is yeah, not something that I don't grasp at it. Oh, I like to do this. It's very good. So then another thing that we can do is that when things arise in the mind, that we reflect on reality and that whatever arises is not me. You know, we always say, I am angry. I am attached. I am. But are we? Do we have to bring in that I? Or can we just have experiences arising in the mind? It's not the I who's angry. There is just anger arising in my mind and dependence upon causes and conditions. Is there a difference? If I say I'm angry, and especially when I'm raised in a family where anger was really bad, I become a bad person and I need to get rid of that anger. And I start to have aversion towards myself being angry. Well, anger is a reaction to an unpleasant feeling. And so what if I say, wow, there is anger arising in my mind. I'm not that anger. But the fact that the anger is there must mean there is suffering. True. There's never anger without suffering. So what if I go to that suffering and try to connect with that? What is actually going on that I'm so angry? Or that anger is arising in my mind? What's going on? Oh, actually, there was a lot of pain there that I hadn't seen before. So can I connect with that pain, and can I be with that pain? And when I can, the anger will naturally dissolve. True? I don't expect you to be convinced of this from the moment you hear this. It is something that we need to familiarize with and look at it again and again. Is that really true? Is that really true? Is that really true? So that we develop the wisdom mind that see, yes, that is really true. I am not my anger. So Antonio would say, anger arises in the mind. My mind is not the anger. Anger is not my mind. It is just something that arises in my mind due to causes and conditions. And he said, keep repeating that. Keep repeating that as long as anger is in the mind. Anger and suffering is optional, yes. Yes. And you, yes. Yeah, the word choose, I always think, because we have strong habits. But if we can see that the main suffering comes from our reaction to the unpleasant feeling and not from the unpleasant feeling itself, then we can see that if I learn not to react in that same manner or to identify with my reactions, I will suffer much less from the same thing. So something similar can happen to me, and when I have more control, I will not suffer in the same way. I think in science, they also look into this, it's like, and then they say that when we experience unpleasantness and then the anger arises, 90% of our suffering, at least 90%, comes from our reaction to the unpleasantness, not the unpleasantness itself. We are our own worst enemies, right? We have heard that before. Well, this is because we have these beliefs that order is unpleasantness. I need to get rid of it, right? And I try to get rid of it. And that sets us up for all the problems that come from that. We do not know how to be with discomfort. We do not know how to be with suffering, right? And then I'm going to blame. I think this always has been like that. But with the way that we live life at the moment, we have set ourselves up for that. It's like, I don't know, suffering, when you suffer, you're a failure, right? You're not good for anything. You still don't know how to be happy? My God. Right? It's like suffering is stupid. You choose for that. And then in a way, it's true. We do. But it's not that, I choose to suffer. I'm too stupid to know what is happiness. It's not like that. But we tell each other that. Right? And so happiness is the only way to live life. And that happiness is coming from doing what they tell you should do in order to be happy, which means following your attachment. And then if you don't become happy, it's all your own bloody fault. It's something wrong with you. And so we are actually reinforcing the way that we have been programmed. We just reinforce that, but much stronger than it was. And life is not like that. If we have the tool, we can turn life around. And I sometimes think we could really have paradise here. We have such good life. We have such good life. If we know how to be with that, with the mind, and how to make the mind peaceful, how to have a peaceful mind within that, we have everything that we can dream of. And so our main problem is how the mind works and how we believe in what we are told and how we believe in what we perceive and and it's all not true. So attachment is not leading to happiness. Removing ourselves from the suffering that we already experience is not leading to freedom from suffering. And so then in Buddhism, we have some general antidotes that I just talked about, bring the mind back and focus on your body and focus on your breath and think about the nature of the mind. And then we have what we call specific antidotes. So for instance, when attachment arises in the mind, when I feel like I need to have this in order to be happy, right? And that grasping becomes really strong, and we can even think that grasping can become an addiction, right? I need to have this in order to be happy. So then the main way that we meditate on, in order to counteract that reaction of attachment, is that we think about impermanence. Very simple, impermanence. That whatever I'm grasping at is impermanent by nature. Even my grasping mind itself is impermanent by nature. Right? So I'm very fond of this. I'm going to take this home. I'm going to put it in my suitcase. I'm sure when I'm home and I pack, I think, what did you do? Right? Looks very different. So the way we see something as extremely beautiful and having all these good qualities that we want to have it, even that is impermanent. Right? I see it today like that, but tomorrow it might look very different. Have you ever done that? You think, oh, these shoes, fantastic, I buy the shoes. And you come home and you think, don't like them so much. Or anything else. Right? It looks like, wow, if I have that, I'm going to be so happy. And then we have it and it's like, I don't see it anymore. So thinking about that the experience that we have with the independence upon an object is impermanent by nature. We see it today as ideal, but that definitely is going to change. It's not forever going to be like that. So what if I, instead of now wanting this, think, what is it actually I already have 20 kilos in my suitcase, so better don't take anything extra because I will have trouble on the airport or whatever. I can think for reasons that I better don't take that. It's not going to make me happy. Is it? It's going to make me happy? No. No real happiness can come from that, right? So when I follow my attachment, no real happiness is going to come from that. When I stop following my attachment, I set myself up to be able to connect with a happiness that does not depend on what I have or what I'm doing. It depends upon a feeling that arises naturally in the mind, which is actually a freedom of my attachment. So practicing contentment. Something's going on? Thinking about impermanence, the main thing that is impermanent in our life is our own body, right? Our own existence, our own life, the life in which we are the person that we believe we are. That one is impermanent by nature. So death is definitely going to come. So instead of thinking about what do I want to do in this life, what if I put my focus upon what if I would live, what would I mean, there's a lot of things that, and now I need to assume that you have spoken about. They say that once you realize the impermanence of your own life, the happiness of this life becomes much less important. Then I don't even have to think about future lives or thinking about the happiness of future lives, but just realizing this life is not going to be forever. The moment you realize that, you're going to make different choices. True, Jan? Right? So when we get older, that impermanence becomes very obvious, right? When we are young, we think, oh, we have forever. we're never going to die. But at a certain time, the body starts doing things that we think, oh. It's kind of, impermanence becomes kind of obvious. And then the mind starts to change. We start to make different choices. And that one thing that we first wanted to have is like, right? You start declutter. Are you ready decluttering? Are you? Yes. You start to clean up, isn't it? Oh, it's a big job because we have been collecting so much in our life that we thought was so important and so fantastic. And then you move towards that and you think, oh my God, just better get rid of it now, right? Nobody else? Nobody else thinks that what I think is right. You know, it's not happened for many, many years, but nobody else thinks it's rubbish. Yeah, so that is your attachment. And it doesn't mean that we have to get rid of everything that we think is great, right? I'm not saying that. So it's not that there is something that you really, really like, but then because you know that you're going to die, you just throw it out. It's not like that. You can keep it until you die, no problem. So it is not that we have to get rid of things that we are really attached to or that we don't like, but we want to work on our attachment, right? So when I see that and I see my strong attachment, I can reflect on the impermanence of that thing. Or I can reflect on the impermanence of myself, that I still have it in my life, but there is going to be a day that I have to separate from that. And then if I'm okay with that, I enjoy it as long as it is with me. But I'm also okay when it is not with me anymore, right? So we work on our attachment, not getting rid of stuff. But I think when we get older, we might start to declutter because we know that the end of life is coming and we see that things are actually, you know, they're just become a burden and they're just things and we don't need them anymore. So we give them maybe to somebody who can use them. So that is a very good antidote to attachment. Thinking about this life is not forever. And we don't have to wait till we're getting old to think about impermanence of death. It's also very good to do that when you're young, because it might help you to make different choices. It might help you to connect with something that is more meaningful to you. Right? Following attachment becomes a very empty life. Empty inside you. True? It's like, why am I here? Just to collect things? Just to go after things? Just to chase? What am I doing here? But when we stop chasing and we don't make that the goal of our life, and we are happy with what we have, we start to connect with something inside us, and then we can find something more meaningful within ourselves that we say, actually, I would like to do this. Right? So we make different choices. So that is the main thing that we meditate upon in order to counteract attachment. But you can also think about, for instance, attachment. Attachment is the mind that exaggerates the positive qualities of an object. So you see more positive qualities there than that there are in actuality. So one way to counteract that is that you contemplate the negative aspects of an object or a person. Right? You do the opposite. If you are blinded, wow, that's so fantastic, I want to have it. Then you start thinking, oh, well, what is the disadvantage if I would have that? You know, I have to carry it, I have to take care of it, and then one day it will break and whatever. Think about the negative aspects. And then be content with whatever you have. And also, you know, when we have a lot of loving relationships, also attachment is not so strong in the mind. When we generate love for many sentient beings. Love is a happy feeling. Attachment comes, it looks like a happy feeling. So when we have a lot of love in the mind, we already have a lot of happy feelings in the mind. There's no need to use attachment to create happiness. I have the happiness of me loving others. Weird, huh? Or not? We grasp, our attachment is there because it believes that it's going to make me happy. It's going to give something to me that causes pleasure to arise in the mind. And the pleasure is our happiness. Right? So attachment is our tool to find happiness. But if I find my happiness by loving others, I don't need my attachment. True? Is love, when we love others, is that a nice feeling or not? We have good feelings inside or not? And so when we're full of love, we are full. We don't need anything else. So then when there is aversion in the mind, and we have been speaking about that in terms of the fear, when there is anything in the mind that is unpleasant and causes aversion or anger to arise in the mind, then there are in general two things that we practice. One is patience, because when unpleasantness arises in the mind and then there is aversion trying to separate us from that unpleasantness, that agitates the mind. That in itself is an agitation. That is a mind that is not patient. Patience is a mind that is undisturbed by suffering. So when fear arises in the mind, fear is suffering. We react with aversion. The aversion is a sign that we do not have the patience to just experience what we are experiencing. So in Buddhism, that reaction of aversion is a lack of patience. That aversion is a mind that is disturbed by suffering. And then the other one that we practice is love, loving kindness. The mind of impatience and the mind of anger is a mind that wants to harm. So when we generate a mind that wants others to be happy, we counteract the mind of aversion. All right. And then we can talk about the I and whatever, but I'm not going to go there today. I want to have some time for questions for you. If you have, or you can give some comments, or you can... Because when we hear too much, we get a bit overloaded, no? We become a bit full. In a good way. Yeah, but it can also make us a bit numb and like, oh my God, yeah. Yeah, I want to hear it, but at the same time.
Bit lost or something around the patience. So you're saying that if you can have patience and being with your mind, that helps to calm.
Yeah, so what is patience according to you?
Patience is just being with something as it is and not trying to make something happen. It's just saying, okay, I need to be patient with this because I can't make it happen.
Right.
So
Buddhism says patience is the mind that is undisturbed by harm or by suffering.
That's what I miss. Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
So patience is not you just have to wait. That's not patience.
Okay.
But when I have to wait, that I keep my mind undisturbed, by the suffering that arises in dependence upon the waiting.
Thank you.
Yes.
Besides patience, where does courage come into it?
Courage. How would you describe courage? Courage for?
A willingness to face adversity. Yeah.
I'm not sure how to answer that. We need that, no? We need to come at a point that we say, oh, the way I have been doing this is not going to work. It doesn't work. I tried it so many times, it doesn't work. I need to find something else. There is already courage in there. And then I think in order to have the courage to really do it, the more, I don't know, does it come from wisdom or does it come from compassion? Or both? Yeah, in Buddhism also courage is that we have the courage to take on something really big, that we don't say, I can't do this.
I guess courage also comes from faith.
Faith, yeah. Faith and then aspiration. So I think there are qualities that we can develop that eventually leads to courage, like leads to the action that we're going to confront. In Buddhism, courage, I only have seen that in as an opposite to laziness, and the laziness being, laziness is very different defined in Buddhism than we do. Laziness is, for instance, when I say, oh no, I'm not going to go for enlightenment, that's too much, I cannot do that. I'm just going to go for my own liberation. And so they call that a laziness, and there is a lack of courage to take on all the suffering. So the only thing that they do is they counteract that laziness by faith and aspiration, by thinking all the positive qualities that can come from when we develop the courage to take on all the suffering of sentient beings.
Yeah, we can have the courage to be patient as well, I guess, can't we?
We can have the courage to be patient.
I was going to say discernment.
Discernment. Is that wisdom? Is that understanding? Is that
understanding that
it's on?
Knowing that, or having some understanding that the thing you need to have courage for is the right thing
Yes.
to be having courage for.
Yes. Yes. You can also have the courage to rob a bank. Right?
Yes. So
So courage is
discernment
not
is a
necessarily a
requirement, yes.
virtue, but in Buddhism, courage, we want to see that in a virtuous way. And so then to develop the proper courage, we need to know, right? We need to understand the path, and we need to understand how we develop qualities. Yes. Yes, there's so much to learn. Okay.
From Catherine Mildura.
Mm-hmm.
It's easy enough to say patience is the antidote to anger, but how can you apply that antidote in that moment of anger?
Uh-huh. Well, then you already lost your patience. Right? So when we get angry, we lost our patience. So that is not the moment to practice patience. You don't say to yourself, just be undisturbed. No, you are already disturbed. So I always think then that experience I take to my meditation cushion, and then I'm going to think about what actually happened and how I could have done that differently, and how I could have seen whatever was happening in a different way so that I can keep my mind undisturbed. Right? And so we can use the chapter of patience from Shantideva to go through all kinds of examples in how we can look at things that make us disturbed and angry, how we can look at them in a different way, and then train the mind on the cushion that I'm going to see it like that. I'm going to see it like that. And the next time, you maybe don't get angry or don't get angry so quickly. Right? And then we can say, oh, this time I had my patience. I could keep my patience. Yeah. So I don't think we learn that in the situation. We have to learn that before the anger comes. Yeah. Are there more questions from online? No? Okay. Anybody else? All questions answered? You take a little package home and say, this is what I've learned. People can watch this back if they need to. Yeah. Yeah. So if you feel the need like, oh, I didn't get that, just go back to it and do it again. My own experience, not with my own teachings, but my experience with other people, right? If you learn something and then you go back to the teachings, you hear something very different, right? Just as when we study Lamrim, you can do Lamrim 10 times and 10 times you hear something completely different and you think, did I miss that? Yeah, we missed that. Because we cannot absorb everything in one go, right? And I don't know. I think, are we? Oh, thank you. Yes, I'm a very, I have made many mistakes. I maybe have said things that are not correct. But I have shared what I have learned in 25 years or 30 years being in Buddhism. And I'm sincerely, what my biggest lesson is becoming friends with negative feelings, you know, instead of running away from them, connecting with them, taking care of my own suffering. You know, I feel there's so much, it is such a basis for other good qualities to arise. If I had not learned that, I think I was just a Christian Buddhist nun. Sorry, it's not, and there's nothing wrong with Christianity, but it is just, I think it imbalances the mind a bit. And in Buddhism, the mind becomes really balanced and really quiet and really focused, you know, because as long as we push something away, there is an agitation in the mind. So when we stop doing that, the mind becomes really calm. And the delusions, there's no need for the delusions to arise. And then we become easier on ourselves and then easier on others. And then life is not too difficult, I think. Thank you very much for coming and for being here with so much patience and attentiveness and courage and all the other qualities. Now we're going to make a photo, or what do we do? Oh, I have to dedicate, sorry. So in Buddhism, two things are important. You see how bad nun I am. It's the motivation that we said at the beginning, and then they say normally what is in the middle is not so important, but then when we dedicate, you know, then whatever virtue or whatever positive quality that we have generated by listening and thinking and meditating, any good quality that we have developed, we dedicate that towards the full development of all the qualities of ourselves. So to our full enlightenment. So then we keep that in mind, and it's on page 12. You do that singing or you do that in English? Okay, so we do maybe in Tibetan. So. Lama Sangye Drum Gyo chikyang ma le pa ne sa la nge pa shuk jan chup sem chok rinpoche ma kye pa nam ye gyo chik kye pa nyam pa me pa yang go ne kong du pel wa shung to ni da wa rinpoche ma kye pa nam ye gyo chik kye pa nyam pa me pa yang go ne gong du pel wa shu. Maybe we do the long life prayer for His Holiness the Dalai Lama on page 17. You do both of them? Okay. Jik ten kam dia pen de ma le pa gang le jung we sam pe yi jino Kadrin sume ten sing ya tsu la su adip so tu je lundrum shuk. And then we can do maybe the swift return prayer for Lama Zopa Rinpoche. And we can read that in English. Peerless teacher and assembly of the children of the victorious ones, Shravakas and Pacheka Buddhas, victorious Losang father and sons, along with the lineage masters, all the objects of refuge of infinite lands, please bestow the virtue and goodness of accomplishing this prayer here and now, holding and spreading the Muni's precious and complete teachings through explanation and practice. You wore the armor of patience that is never discouraged. Incomparable, Venerable Guru, to you I make request. While striving single-pointedly for the sake of the victorious one's teachings, the sole gateway through which all benefit and happiness emerge, and for mother living beings, you suddenly departed to peace. What a great loss. Nevertheless, through the undeceiving truth of the blessings of the ocean of the three jewels and the great ways of bodhicitta of the children of the victorious ones, may the smile of a reincarnation